Join the conversation on CFRA Live with Andrew Pinsent. Text 580-580 right now.
And welcome back. Got a few more texts there during the break on a few of the conversations we're going to be having here during our weekly rundown news panel. So keep that conversation going. We shall keep this going here on the air this morning as well. Joining us for our weekly rundown news panel is Keenan Wellar. He's the co-leader and director of communications for Live, Work, Play. Keenan, happy Saturday and happy long weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Same to you. Good to be here.
Nice to hear your voice once again. And Maria McRae, former city councillor for River Ward, is also here. Maria, happy long weekend.
Same to you. Good morning, and I love that Cyndi Lauper to start us off.
Of course. We try to get some energy going here in the mornings, for sure. We try, anyway. It doesn't always work. But we've been talking about a little bit this morning. What's been getting some energy on the text board this morning is this conversation around Byward Market and businesses. We saw a story on CTV last night kind of highlighting some of the issues that business owners have been facing. Some businesses have decided to leave the area, so trying to address some of these issues. I guess, Maria, from your perspective, I guess we've been talking a lot about kind of perception and reality this morning, but I guess if the perception is that people will feel unsafe when they're heading down to the Byward Market, chances are they're probably not going to head down there, right?
Well, absolutely, and it doesn't take long for these kind of rumors, if they're not real even, to spread like wildfire. And certainly I've noticed a change, and I think all of us have who have been down there over the years. And I'm optimistic, though, that some of the issues that were being resolved or worked on, such as having that steady police presence, for example, are going to help. But definitely we need to hear from the businesses because they're the ones that see it all the time.
And Keenan, it feels like, the social issues kind of run near the top of the list for many people about that, perception of safety downtown. But there's some other issues here at play too. Business owners talk about high rents and other things that are driving them from the downtown. I guess, do you see any, one answer here that will fix everything? Or is this going to take, a conglomeration of things?
Yeah, definitely a conglomeration. I would just say it's obviously not just Ottawa. So this is an experience. If any of us go to any downtowns in Canada or elsewhere, we're going to see some changes from what we might have seen in those same downtowns a few years before. I would just say, Times Square is by no means a safe place, but a lot of people go there because they've taken steps to make it safer, make the experience feel safer. So there's definitely ways of doing things, but you're not going to eradicate every social problem just because it's a tourist area. It's going to be a conglomeration, as you say.
And I guess the tourism safety also one aspect of this, Keenan, as well. But I guess just for residents and businesses trying to keep afloat down here, we have seen many of them leaving. Do you think even if an increased police presence doesn't necessarily net more arrests, do you think it gives this feeling of perhaps people will feel safer in the market, or do you think this police presence will help in any way at all?
It's going to depend how they go about it. I mean, I tend to feel like if I walk into somewhere and there's a lot of police, my first instinct isn't, wow, this must be a really safe place. It's more like, wow, there must be a reason why there's a lot of police. But it depends how they go about the presence and how they deal with people and businesses. So hopefully they're looking into how other urban areas have done that successfully so that people feel safer and not just scared.
It's a very good point as well. And Maria, to your point about the police patrols expected to pick up, but also the new police station that's expected to open up in the Reno Center there. Do you think even just that visibility, it sounds like you think that will also help kind of keep people feeling safe?
Absolutely. I think of traveling to different cities, and for example, Keenan brought up Times Square. When you see officers walking in pairs, you recognize them, they're in uniform. Now, there's not going to be 50 or 100 of them, and you wonder what happened. But if you see them scattered throughout the area, I think that people will feel safer. I mean, I've been to the Lincoln Memorial at night when it's open in Washington, D.C., and there's certainly a presence of security in the area, and you feel safe because there's someone you can yell at, there's someone you can contact if you need to, or maybe ask directions, something as simple as, how do I get to that other street? But there's definitely a need for the groups to get together, whether it's the interests of the market association that they put together, meeting with the local councillor. And the issue of rent is something that the city should not be tampering with, in my opinion. I think we have to look at, yes, there could be stresses and there could be issues, but when you start talking about business issues that are dealt with by the free market and you look for government interference, you can sometimes get into problems with that. So I think that that's a different conversation to have.
You definitely, you gave me a good segue here in terms of, I guess, markets and kind of handling those differently in the city getting involved, because We did see this issue with taxi drivers this week, and this ruling we saw come down from an Ontario Superior Court judge. So essentially, Uber is still alive and well here in Ottawa. Nothing's going to change about that. But it was the way that it was brought in, and the city essentially not doing anything to kind of enforce its own rules surrounding taxis that's left it in a little bit of a lurch here. So the ruling coming in favor of taxi drivers. There's no ruling on the amount of money, but the city could owe upwards of $215 million here. I guess, Maria, just kind of an interesting way for this to square out, because like I said, when this started, we did have rules around taxis, but we weren't really enforcing them. Now we're kind of stuck with this situation we have now. Just what do you make of this?
Well, certainly that is a huge amount of money that they're looking for. I'm not sure how the damages are going to be calculated, and I would watch that with interest, because that's the kind of thing that makes people upset. Is there's a lawsuit, and all of a sudden you could get tens of $1 million floating out the window of City Hall, and that's taxpayer money. But definitely, I know as a lawyer especially, and a former counselor, I was definitely intrigued by what the judge said about the lack of enforcement with respect to some of the rules, and it's just mind-boggling. And I had left counsel by that point, so I was not aware of some of the, let's say, intricacies that might have been discussed in camera. But definitely, I think it's an opportunity for meaningful discussion with our taxi industry. Certainly a really important part of any city is our taxi industry. And people who say Uber's going away are dreaming. That's not going away. So there has to be a way that we can integrate these services for the betterment of the city, whether it's tourism, getting people from the airport to downtown, or getting someone home safely. Young person leaving a party needs to get home, and everything in between.
Yeah, to your point, Marc-Andre Way saying, even with the Canadian Taxi Association saying there's no way Uber is going anywhere. This is kind of talk about a level playing field moving forward. But Keenan, did we kind of? I know we're playing Monday morning quarterback here from almost a decade ago. But did we really step in it by not enforcing our own rules surrounding taxi services? And now we're kind of paying the piper, as it were.
Yes, and if we're being honest, let's face it, because people had mixed feelings about the taxi industry, and that's why we didn't speak up more when it was kind of obvious, but you have these rules and they paid to be a part of those rules, and now someone else isn't paying. And what the justice had to say was a bit eerily reminiscent of something that happened a few years later, a defeatist and acceptance approach. I had convoy flashbacks about bylaw enforcement. I was like, yes, the city's defense was we couldn't stop them, and so we're not responsible. And then it was the same thing. We couldn't stop Uber, so we're not responsible. I mean, that was essentially, I'll defer to the lawyer, but that was essentially their defense. So that's not going to work, and we should have paid more attention, because selective enforcement of the law is not good for civil society.
It's a very good point to bring up as well, because the opposite side of that is, I don't think a lot of people had empathy for the taxi industry in general, because, from a consumer perspective, they were getting much cheaper rates for the same service from another company. So you can see where, people would be hesitant to kind of stand up one way or the other. But no doubt, it might be a precedent. Other municipalities are probably looking over their shoulders across this country to see, what they could owe down the line. Wanted to squeeze in a couple of more stories this week. We see OC Transpo. We still don't have a firm opening date for Trillium Line. It could be still some time. We're sitting, waiting, wishing. Maria, we've talked about this before in some senses of, we saw what happened with Stage 1. Do we want to rush it and get this time, or get this on this, timeline, or do we want to get it right? Are you concerned at all about still that we don't have a firm date on this?
Not at all. We want no. So actually, that's not true. I'm concerned because things are taking longer, but we want to get it right. If there was anything that we should have learned from the inquest, was all the mistakes that were made in rushing to open the first stage. So certainly, I guarantee you that our mayor and council and staff want to see this open, as do the residents that want to use it. I mean, almost every day I see the extension of the line going past the South Key Station. You can see it running. It's going over the Airport Parkway Bridge. It's wonderful. You can see them testing the cars. So I think we're not too far away from the opening. But on the other hand, if there's public pressure where people say, oh my goodness, open it, I want it, and something happens, I say, give me a break, folks. Let's learn from what happened before. And yes, we want to see it open. But on the other hand, the notion of public noise or even noise from within council pushing staff to open something that's not ready, look back in time. Let's not repeat those mistakes.
Yeah, very easy to look back here, Keenan, and see that, we did have issues when we were kind of looking to an artificial date to get things running. Does it concern you that we don't have a specific date, or are you good with, sometime this summer, essentially?
Well, there wasn't very good consequences from on track, on time. So I'm all about the on the track all the time. So I think waiting is okay, and we don't want WhatsApp groups and people don't about trains making decisions. Let's actually let the safety people be in charge of this, and let's stand behind them. And when they say it's ready, it's ready. We don't need artificial pressures at all. Definitely on the track.
It's a good point. Say on the track all the time as well, right? We've got an issue with at St. Laurent Station. There's looking at some ceiling tiles this morning, so there's no LRT service to St. Laurent Station this morning. So just another highlight of some of the issues that the system has faced. Just a couple minutes left. We'll squeeze in one more story here. I guess it kind of relates to the downtown core, perhaps in some ways, revitalizing the core in the downtown and the Byward Market. But this whole situation of hiring a night mayor, apparently we have hired one. We've put an offer out. We just don't know who that is yet. Maria, are you hoping to get something useful out of this? Do you think that it could be a good thing for trying to revitalize Ottawa's nightlife, as it were?
We absolutely have to give it a try. So I'm very optimistic that whoever's been hired is going to do their best to give it a try. Again, especially as we approach the summertime, there's nothing more important than having a vibrant downtown. You can look at cities across North America where the downtowns close up at 6 o'clock and they're horrible. So many bad things happen. Businesses close. There's nothing for people to walk to. So I think it's fantastic. If you live in the downtown core, for example, and things are open later and there's a place to walk to, let's say after an event, maybe you go see something, a concert or whatnot, I'm very optimistic that this is going to be a good thing. And the only thing I want to see is the data. So I hope that the city has plans to actually show us, here's where we were in 2024, here's where we're at 2025. So we can actually see something that's concrete as to how it works. And definitely through the Economic Development Department, they will have that data.
Yeah, even if it's not a lot, some people will want to know that return on the investment of what we're putting into this as well. Keenan, is there any truth to the rumor that you've been named the nightmare?
I didn't get the call yet.
Not yet, okay.
No, but it's too bad. I had a really, you think I'm kidding, but in all seriousness, maybe even just once a night, once a week, we can solve this backlog of these the speed cameras and the red light cameras and the parking tickets. Have a night court by the night mayor from the Château Lafayette. I'm serious. It's going to work.
I think you should be careful. People might be stealing those ideas that might be worth something here.
That's fine.
We'll leave it there for now. Keenan, Wellar, and Maria McRae, thank you so much for joining me on this Saturday morning. I hope you guys have a great long weekend.
Thank you. Have a great long and safe weekend, everybody.
You too, Maria. That is Maria McRae, former city councilor for River Ward, joining us here on our weekly rundown news panel, and Keenan Wellar, co-leader, director of communications with Live, Work, Play. Both Ottawans. That's their thoughts. Your thoughts welcome at 580-580. You can also tweet us at CFRA Ottawa. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get to some text before we get to the top of the hour here on News Talk 580 CFRA.